Welcome to Race Talks, and we're starting a little later than usual, but wanted to have a newcomers orientation. How many of you are newcomers? This is your first time here. Tonight's topic is where pushouts can lead, the penal system. And we have two august speakers this evening, and I'm very excited. One I have known all of my life, actually since first grade.
Really?
And her sister and I have been good friends and still are since first grade. It's Lurleen Shamsuddin. Lurleen is a native Oregonian, the mother of 8 talented and gifted children and 14 granddaughters and 3 grandsons. She's a mental health therapist trained in clinical psychology. She's a former educator and administrator in Portland and independent schools who spent her retirement on graduate school.
Right.
She trained as a psychologist at Pacific University for 5 years and completed all academic coursework and left short of a dissertation, better known as ABD. She's a certified drug and alcohol counselor and is the program director for an adolescent psychiatric day treatment program, the Nickerson program, and an adolescent substance abuse program, REAL, at LifeWorks Northwest, the Umoja site. Our other speaker is Lonnie Jackson, and I'm going to introduce both of them at the same time because they know each other. And so they're going to kind of riff off of each other. You like that little hip-hop word? Hey, it doesn't take much to please me. Lonnie Jackson grew up in a violent drug, crime, and gang-infested area of South Central Los Angeles. He experienced firsthand the devastation gang activity had on the lives of his community. Today, in addition to being a dynamic speaker and author, he is the president of Jackson Training and Consulting Services, JTCS, and founder and former director of the nationally recognized Oregon Youth Authority Office of Minority Services, which has assisted numerous youth offenders into becoming positive and productive young people returning to their communities. Lonnie has been the leading advocate in Oregon state government on addressing disproportionate minority contact, DMC, and was appointed by the Oregon Governor's Office to chair the Governor's Summit Planning Committee on eliminating disproportionate minority contact in the juvenile justice system. Since its inception, which brings together key stakeholders, partners in education, community organizations, law enforcement, families, youth, communities of color, juvenile departments, corrections, legislators, judicial, private sector, and others to address this serious issue. Bet you didn't know all those people were working on this, did you? He has held keynotes, presentations, workshops, and seminars all around the country on DMC, mass incarceration, youth gang violence, prevention, and intervention. He has received numerous recognition and awards for his leadership and efforts in helping at-risk gang youth, including Compton Award for the Marion County Bar Association for extraordinary service to the bar and judicial system, City Council of Los Angeles Commendation of Achievement Award for his efforts in preventing youth violence, and most recently the Oregon Counseling Association Human Rights Award at their statewide conference. He is the author of the book Gangbusters, which was published by the American Correctional Association, ACA, and has been listed as an ACA Top 10 bestseller. Lonnie has written articles for Corrections Today magazine and wrote an essay on the Gangbusters program for the ACA book. Juvenile Justice Today, essays on programs and policies. Mr. Jackson also received a grant from the United States Information Agency to conduct a community action and drug abuse prevention program in Bangkok, Thailand. Now, before I turn this over, I was going to say that I used to do discipline at the middle school. Not going to say anything. Anyway, I used to do discipline at the middle school, and at a middle school in North Portland, and it was amazing to me what I put together on my own. The school, when I started, was 1/3 African American, 1/3 Latino, 1/3 white. What I saw in my office is that 90% of the referrals that were written, and this means you have backed it up. Okay, are we still here? That 90% of the referrals that I got were for boys. 90% of the boys were black and Latino, and 90% of that group was black. And I had to look around and say, are all the white kids acting right? And I had to be honest and say, no, they are not. No, they are not. And some of the referrals were so ridiculous, I was just livid. Things like you were walking down the hall wearing your hat. So the teacher took the hat off, snatched the hat off your head, and the kid got pissed and said something. Or you went against the rules and had your cell phone on as you were walking down the hall to go home as school was out. So you got a referral. So a lot of these referrals are unnecessary, and kids are not deserving of them. I had a kid who got a referral because he was falling asleep in class and came to find out. The teacher hadn't asked him why. I said, did you ask him why he was falling asleep? Well, I think he's on drugs. I said, did you ask him? Well, no. Well, came to find out, the kid was getting up every day at 4 o'clock because his family had 2 paper routes, and they were, you know, those little advertisement nickel papers. He was going out trotting, delivering those every morning. And he would come to school, and he was just exhausted. And he wasn't going to tell me what the issue was, and I had to force him into doing it. And he finally told me what the issue was. I taught the kid how to meditate, and for the future, he would get more rest when he'd come back home at 6:30 before he'd get up to go to school. That particular day, I said, you go lay down and you sleep. And anytime you are sleepy, come down here and let me, you know, ask to come see me, and you can come lay down. But it's about relationship. It's about getting to know the kids and not assuming immediately that this kid is wrong, that this kid is a troublemaker. And my last thing I will say is we have lost our blankety-blank minds in this country with the zero tolerance. I had to suspend a kid who brought a little tiny toy gun, because the rules said if you brought a gun, then you had to be suspended. I had to do that. And on top of that, I don't know if you've noticed, heard lately that there was a situation where a 2nd grader was put in handcuffs and taken to the office because he was hollering. And then there was another situation where a 6th grader did something, a neighbor had called the police and said the boys were climbing in the tree. What a novel thing. Boys were climbing in a tree, and the police came and held them at gunpoint and took them down to the police station. And the neighbor said, well, I didn't mean for that to happen. I just was concerned that they'd be safe. Well, then why didn't you just say that to the kid? Again, relationship. So we have kids going into the penal system, being kicked out of school, when what they need is teachers that have developed relationship and understand them. And unfortunately, particularly here in Oregon, the teachers don't look like the kids. Most of the teachers are white females. And my experience has been, it doesn't matter what ethnicity the boy is, most females don't understand boys. They have a tough time dealing with them. Somebody told me that they got a call from their child's teacher the first day of kindergarten saying, he can't sit still. So you're understanding what I'm trying to paint a picture for what some of the issues are. I don't think that the teachers are being mean or malevolent, but there's a disconnect. Portland Public has recently, through attrition and retirements, has almost 400 positions that are going to be open, and they are in the process of recruiting teachers of color, because that will help. Now, I'm not saying that that will solve all of the problems. It won't solve all of the problems if we mostly have male teachers, but it does help. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers, Lurleen Shamsuddin and Lonnie Jackson.
So good evening. Let me see, let me get this on. I thought I did a good job of this. Hello? Is it it coming back there?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we'll get it back. All right, so good evening to you all. And thank you for having me tonight. And especially thank you to Race Talks for the invitation. It's really funny listening to you talk, Donna, because how long has it been since you retired?
2 years.
Only 2 years? Okay. So there are some things that really stay with you as an educator. So right now, I'm a mental health therapist. I consider myself a mental health therapist, although I'm a program director of a couple of programs. And that is not why I went to graduate school. I actually went so I could get credentials, so I could talk to people about what happens in school and give some support to teachers. Teachers really need a lot of support. Parents need a lot of support. And also to acknowledge and affirm for kids that their experiences are real. I started working in 1986 with Portland Public Schools. All of my children went through Portland Public Schools, did well in school, graduated from high school. But that, took a lot of doing. You have to be there with your kids and you have to do homework. So I had 8 kids, I had 8 hours of homework every night. But there was a time when one of my sons, my oldest son actually, was in high school, and the teacher called me and said, he's been absent for 37 days. And my first thought was, why am I just now getting a call when he's been absent for 37 days? But this will kill you. I graduated from Jefferson High School in 1961, and the woman who called me was the science teacher. And she was a mean science teacher when we were there. We were afraid to miss a class. Well, I said, so wait a minute, why are you calling me after 37 days? And she said, well, because when I see him in the hall, he tells me he's coming. Well, obviously not. After that first time, you should have called, or reported that. But she did not do that. And he was going to the gym and working out with guys in the gym and the basketball coach, who knew him very, very well because he was on the basketball team, never sent him back to class. And then the teacher further told me, well, I was going to give an exam yesterday, but I waited for him to come and he didn't come, so I didn't give it. So, there are some things where people really like your kid and it hurts them, and there are some times where people don't like your kids so much and it really hurts them. So, after I left Portland Public Schools, I went to an independent school in Southwest Portland and worked there on the administrative team for 3 years. And then I left and went to graduate school. And while I was at this other school, I could see the huge difference between what was going on in elementary and in Portland Public Schools and what was going on in this school where families paid $13,000 a year for pre-K. And the difference was in the expectations for kids. Kids in the public schools were being trained to be followers, and the kids at this other school were being trained to be leaders. And when I was working with Portland Public Schools, I went there in 1986 to coordinate a program called the Sabin Demonstration School. And it was a school within a school. It became an award-winning program in the 10 years that I was there. Won $25,000 Millikan Award for the principal, and that's only given to 25 administrators in the nation every other year. Teachers get it the other years. And that was because this program worked. And the program was designed for specifically African American males who weren't doing well in the traditional classroom setting. Ron Herndon and a lot of people in the Black United Fund had said, this thing that Donna was talking about where the kids were being sent to the office, and most of the kids being sent to the office were black males. Well, something was wrong with that picture. And all across the nation, this was happening. And at about 3rd grade, when kids were doing well up until 3rd grade, African American males started going downhill. And people want to know what makes the difference. Well, we already know what makes a difference. You know, there are some key things that you need for effective schools, and the first one is a strong administration, saying all children can learn, and we're going to teach all children. And then high expectations, a safe and clean environment, parent involvement, some caring teachers, and some acknowledgement of the work that is being done by the teachers, and then some monitoring and accountability. And then you're going to have some children who are going to excel, who will do well. So the program at Sabin was designed by myself, by Dan Stanton, who was a white male teacher, who said, hey, I think this is what we need. We need to expose kids to technology. And we also need to help kids learn how to learn. Not tell kids what to learn and what to think, but teach them how to think. And that we put that together along with some community involvement and involving mentors and families and letting kids study their own interest and letting them do that by using the scientific method of inquiry. So we taught them how to do that. It was an amazing thing. So I want to tell you that one of the kids in the program was, we identified him at 3rd grade. So we had 2 classrooms, and there were about between 15 and 20 kids. So we have the luxury of being able to have smaller class sizes than the traditional classroom setting because there was a grant involved. And so there was a 3rd grader that we identified and as a kid who was going to need something outside of the traditional classroom. And we identified many kids this way. And teachers identified kids, kids identified kids, families identified kids. And they did that by saying, you know, who's the leader on the playground, who's the leader in the class. And then we had a mix of kids. So we had 2/3 of the kids who were achieving below grade level, 1/3 at or above grade level. And then we brought in girls as well to have kind of like a dynamic, diverse group. These kids were amazing in the way that they took to being able to study their own interests. The kid that was the 3rd grader, the first 3rd grader that I ever met, who the teacher said, that kid is not going to make it. That's why we took that kid, because who says at 3rd grade, that kid's not going to make it? And I remember when I met this child, I went to take the teacher's class so that the teacher could be out in the classroom for a little bit. And this child was bouncing all over the walls. And she did. She actually pointed at him and said, that kid is not going to make it. So that kid is the reason that I spent my retirement on graduate school. So one of the things that I read maybe about 20 years ago now was this quote from Chaim Junot, and it is about power. And he says, is it up there? Yeah. Okay. So you guys have probably read it already, but I just want to say it again so that you can feel the weight of that, because I think about this all the time in many, many ways, and it's something, you don't have to be a teacher to make a difference in the life of people. But as a teacher, you have incredible power. And the way that he said it was, I've come to a frightening conclusion that I am the decisive element in the classroom. It's my personal approach that creates the climate. It's my daily mood that makes the weather. As a teacher, I possess a tremendous power to make a child's life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or heal. In all situations, it is my response that decides whether a crisis will be escalated or de-escalated, and a child humanized or dehumanized. That stays with me all the time, especially in the work that I do. Sometimes, you know, there are people that you just struggle to understand what's going on with them. But if I tell my staff sometimes when they struggle with some of our clients, it's like, you know what, you have to find something to like about that kid. You have to find something to like about that person. You cannot dehumanize someone or demonize someone because of something that is out of their control. That diminishes you. It diminishes us. And as people in this room, we have that same power. If you see someone on the street, raise your hand if you passed someone on the street today and then didn't look them in the eye or didn't give them a smile. Or if someone did that to you and you felt something not so pleasant. That's just a bad feeling. If you look at someone and you look as though you don't see them, that is a nick in that person's heart. So I wrote some, these are actual things that I heard when I was working in school. That kid will never make it. By the way, that kid went on to graduate from Boston College. And the last I heard, he had come back to Portland and was working at Self-Enhancement. And he actually was the very first child in his family who ever graduated from high school. So this took place in a kindergarten classroom. And the teacher said, how will they ever learn to spell their names? So black people have some names for their children. Juanisha, Dea, Janae, LaQuisha, Laquitha. Now I'm going to tell you, every single, the Laquithas, all of those Juanishas, Dea, Janae, they're all spelled differently. And everybody's going to tell you, but mine's spelled differently. And why do we have those names? Because it's an institutional memory that we have from time before slavery, where we had lyrical, beautiful sounding names. And families may not know what those were, but they've got that memory there, and so they're going to give that to their children. But when that teacher said that, that just kind of like dumbfounded me, because I thought, hold on, teacher, and aren't you supposed to teach syllables? So, you know, how would anybody learn how to spell their name? You know, this was another kindergarten teacher that said, I don't like that kid. And I remember saying, you can't say, I don't like that kid. He said, I don't like that kid. I just don't like that kid. And I said, well, then you need to go back and start doing art, which, by the way, he has. And he's really good at it. You guys have probably seen some of it. An administrator said to a kid, what are you doing in here? So there's something that happens 8:15, let's see, for 15 minutes before and 15 minutes after, teachers have a contract, and they don't see kids 15 minutes before class, until 15 minutes before class, and they don't see kids longer than 15 minutes after class. It's their discretion, but the contract says you only have to do this. So, freezing cold outside, and there's a child inside the building, and the administrator sees the kid down in the well around the stairs and says, what are you doing in here? Just nasty. It was like, what do you think they're doing in here? It's a school? But you know, this thing where you said the child was getting up early and going and delivering the papers? Suppose, just suppose, the school was the only place that was warm for that child. And so, coming from a cold place and coming in early and being able to get warm. We don't know. We don't know. Our humanity needs to be more on display. These things really broke my heart. I was walking behind our vice principal, and he was walking with a second grader, and we had portables, and he was walking with this kid, and I heard him saying to the kid that if you keep this up, you're going to end up in jail. This is a second grader. And I loved that kid. I don't remember exactly which one it was. I kind of have it like there was a little group that were sassy. And he said, you can say that, but I know I'm not. Love it. Love it. That was resilience. That was resilience. And then when I used to, when I first started, I used to be on the playground with first and second graders. And I had this long maxi coat. And I can remember saying, oh, those little ducklings, they just like follow me all over the playground and they're wiping their little snotty noses on the hem of my coat. But I was saying that affectionately, you know, because somebody had said something about the little ducklings following me. So a couple of the little ducklings got to be 4th and 5th graders. And I was walking down the hall and I said, good morning. And they both stopped what they were doing. They were talking to each other and they looked up at me. And then they looked back at each other and just kept right on talking. And so I kept walking for a few beats. And then I thought to myself, hold on. If I don't go say something to these kids, they're going to think this is okay. And so I went back and I knelt down and I said, guys, I just said good morning. And you guys just act like I didn't say anything. And they looked at me and they looked at each other and they were wide-eyed because it was kind of scary. Because there was this adult confronting them and they said, we didn't see you. I said, look at me. I am big. I am black. I am wearing a red dress. This is true. You saw me. It is not okay. But you know, they weren't doing that to be dismissive or disrespectful or rude. They actually dismissed me. They saw me, but somewhere along the line from time when they were like wiping their little snotty noses on my coat, they didn't see me any longer. And that's what was happening to the boys. They were no longer cute as they were moving out of 3rd grade because they were asking questions, they were moving around, they were yelling out, they were waiting to be called on and no one was calling, so they were like doing this and no one was calling on them because I never call on kids that call out. You know, it's like, well, they raised their hand 3 times and you looked over them each time, and that actually happened, but someone didn't believe that they had done that. They were like, what kid that raised their hand? And I said, there's research that shows that we teach to that middle and we teach to the front. And the ones that are in the middle and in the front are usually white males. And then the girls next, and white girls next. And then further and on the sides, the cute black girls, and then the boys at the end. And you know, even hearing that cute thing, my sister who's in California told me when her daughter was in elementary, she went to this school and the principal said something to her about, no, it wasn't your daughter, it was that cute black girl. So we have biases that we need to work on. That's all I'm saying. And I have just 2 minutes left, but what I want to say is that the kids that are getting pushed out are the kids that need us the most. And I want them to be pushed out into the mental health system, and not that they have mental health issues so much as they have emotional scars, they have trauma. But that's all mental health. And I really want to leave you with this story of a young man so that you can visualize what is going on with our children today. You all know that when Trayvon Martin was killed, raise your hand if you remember Trayvon Martin. Oh, good job. When Trayvon Martin was killed, when Sandy, was it Sandy Hook, where the kids were all killed? Okay. So there was a collective conscious of outpouring of grief. And they said, you know, okay, for the Sandy Hook kids, let's, you know, have all this counseling. And, you know, there was counseling going all around the place. When Trayvon Martin was killed, I don't believe that took place. And Lonnie will probably talk about the number of young black males that have been murdered in Portland, Oregon, either murdering each other or being murdered by others that were supposed to protect them, and that there has been no collective outpouring of grief that addressed this with young black males. So I do a lot of assessments. I do mental health assessments, I do drug and alcohol assessments, and there are always questions about trauma. And invariably, when I get to the questions about trauma, I ask kids, I say, so, you know, have you experienced any trauma in your life? And they're like, trauma? No. And I say, well, you know, have you ever, do you know anybody who's been shot? Yeah. Do you know anybody who's been jumped? Yeah. You know anybody who's just been jumped into gangs, or somebody who's been raped, or, you know, boyfriend, girlfriend, violence, and all of this is, the answers are yes to this. And so I say, well, that's trauma. You know, did anybody ever do counseling for you? And also the other part of that is, have you been shot? Or have you jumped someone? All of those things. And one kid said to me, all of that. And I said, well, this is typical in your community with your circle of friends, but that's not normal. So we have lots and lots and lots of kids walking around hurt. Very hurt, because we don't acknowledge that they are hurt. We don't care for our youth of color the way we care for others. And we need to care for everyone. We need to acknowledge that. The last thing I wanted to say was intentionality. So, you know, we can say that, yeah, well, we don't have any money for this, we don't have any money for that, and then one of the reasons I think things haven't gone well in our city and we haven't eradicated a lot of things is because we throw money at things, and we'll have a 3-year grant and a 1-year grant, and that funds somebody's lifestyle for a short period of time, but it doesn't help the community. And so the intentionality is what we have to have if we want to truly make a difference. And Ron Edmonds, who was a young educator, said, we can, whenever and wherever we choose, successfully teach our children whose schooling is of interest to us. We already know more than we need to do that. Whether or not we do, it must finally depend on how we feel about the fact that we haven't done so far. So I challenge all of you to look somebody in the face the next time you're walking down the street. It's a young black male, young Asian male, anybody that's walking in your path. It can be white, black, blue, yellow, green, I do not care. Do not ignore humanity in front of you. Please do not diminish yourself in that way. Thank you. So now I yield the mic to my colleague, Mr. Lonnie Jackson.
Thank you, Lurleen. First, I would like to say good evening, and I really want to commend everybody for being here on a beautiful day. That again shows me the commitment and passion folks have for addressing issues pertaining sometimes to difficult topics to talk about. Whenever you talk about race and justice and inequalities, a lot of folks want to kind of moonwalk, or it makes people really uncomfortable for you to come and be willing to be engaged. And really with race talks, and again appreciate the invite from Donna to also not just talk about it, but have dialogue so you can really enhance and foster greater sensitivity, understanding, racial identity amongst each other is fantastic. Again, I want to say hi to Lurleen. She's been a colleague for many years. I always like to look at them in the trenches in terms of working with a lot of youth that are, at many times the youth we work with, feeling disenfranchised, don't see many options, have had difficulty in the school system. And really, she's been there, on the front end, doing a lot of positive work. So give her another round of applause. Now, for me, it's going to be challenging, but I'm going to do my best. 15, 20 minutes, and I saw Donna got those cards. She's going to hold me to it. She's going to hold me to it. But in my brief time with you today, I'm just going to say suspensions, expulsions, school to prison pipeline. There's no doubt that suspensions and expulsions, there's a correlation with young people getting committed to the juvenile criminal justice system. I work on the back end of the system. And so I'm kind of going to flip the script a little bit. I'm going to share a little bit about why working, really why this topic is so important to me personally, as well as my journey in working with high-risk, gang-involved youth. It's been a ride, continues to be one, and it's an issue that I have so much passion, commitment, and really is a never-ending advocacy for me. And what I hope to share beyond just a real quick snapshot of my little personal journey is kind of why we founded a gang intervention youth empowerment program at the McLaren Youth Correctional Facility, which is Oregon's largest juvenile correctional facility, which later has evolved into the statewide Office of Minority Services. And lastly, I just want to touch on just this issue of mass incarceration and the impact that it has primarily on low-income, Black, Latino, special education, young people that get caught up into it. So with that being said, as Donna mentioned, I'm originally from South Central Los Angeles, and really, I could have been a statistic victim to the system myself. I don't have a lot of time to give a lot of my background, but I grew up in an environment, drugs, gangsters, home Crips, Bloods. I grew up on 59th in Normandy. I had a whole different mentality at one time in my life when I was coming up. A lot of partners, friends came up short. A lot of them got killed through gang violence or got involved in drugs, wound up in the system. And at the end of the day, I gotta be honest, I love that lifestyle. I love the excitement, the glamour. I shouldn't say glamour, but when you're in it, you don't see and think about the consequences or that you might get killed because you're running with your homeboys. And I had guys, when I was coming up, named, Flynn, EB, Little Country, Little Crazy. These are my guys. We had each other's backs. So that's the environment I grew up in. But like, Lurleen was sharing, the thing that really, I think, gave me an opportunity was to see other options. Was I had a strong mother. And my mother, I came from a single parent household, mother that raised 3 boys by herself. And when you get to be an adult, you really don't know the sacrifices your parents make. My mother was awesome. I get amazed just thinking about how did you do it when we started off in Watson and we thought we were moving on up like the Jeffersons when we moved over to South Central. But she was just fantastic. And probably the reason I stayed out of the wild style stuff in terms of really not doing enough to really get locked up. But at the end of the day, again, I love the lifestyle, the mentality. I think the thing that also gave me a chance was education. That's why I'm such an advocate of education. I didn't know education at the time, didn't value education, but I had an opportunity to get an education. And I don't have time to tell the story, but I got to share a little bit. put it this way, I played sports and that helped keep me out of some of the wild style stuff. I was in career guidance office one day. One of my guys on the team, his name was Slow Mo. If you saw him play basketball, you know why we called him Slow. He was slow on the court. But Slow wanted to go to some school anywhere, you know, to go to college. Slow probably, you know, he was kind of more studious. And Slow, back then, you know, we didn't have the technology, he pulled an admission card. That admission card said, Willamette University, Salem, Oregon. And he said, Lonnie, let's go here, fill this out. I said, no way. He got me to fill it out. I didn't get it, my mom's got it, she sent it back in. I think Willamette needed to reach a quota or something that year. I don't know why they accepted me, but they accepted me. Mom's had my bags packed, I was on the way to Oregon, and I had no clue. Biggest culture shock ever had in my life. I mean, I grew up in there, you know, I had a perm, I had processed hair,
Oh, wow.
the clothes. I mean, I was an alien on another planet when I hit Greg, did you go to Willamette? I did Greg. I know law schools. Greg know what I'm talking about over here then. Yeah, and back then, I thought a lot of blacks, I said, well, you know, it's a predominantly white private university, but my thinking was it had to have at least 200 blacks. You know my shock when I hit campus. First year, let me tell you this. First year, moms, they put me in a frat. Let me do this other thing. I didn't know what a fraternity was. Couldn't give me the rest in a frat. Bottom line was, moms left, got me enrolled or registered. Think about it. 1 minute, I grew up in an all-black environment. I'm at Salem, Oregon, Willamette, dressed, earring, leather coats, all that. I mean, my mom said, you're not coming back for at least a semester. And I was getting in conflict with other students, faculty. I was on academic probation. I didn't care. I didn't even understand what it took to graduate. End of the day, I really thought I was making all the excuses. I'll just go back to LA, go to junior college, yada, yada, yada. But fortunate things happened. An advisor came on campus, a minority advisor, and she put it to me. And she made me understand the opportunity I had. And also I heard professors talking about the Jackson kids, saying, oh, you know, he's from, you know, kind of the ghetto or inner city. He's not really equipped to do well here academically. And I always felt it wasn't because I wasn't smart enough, it's just that I never applied myself and I didn't understand the value of education. Long story short, the hardest thing I ever had to do in my life was flip the script and start learning how to be a good student and start seeing the value of education, getting out of and recognizing that even though I was out of my comfort zone, I had opportunity to grow as a man and as an individual. And like I said, I can't share all my experiences, but I was able to graduate on time. I became president of the Minority Student Union when I was at Willamette, and it helped kind of pave the way for what has been my lifelong work and mission, you know. And after I left, I got a job at McLaren, largest juvenile correctional facility. Thought it'd be cool, thought with my background I could work good, especially with youth of color. First couple of years, I was a correctional counselor, sex offender treatment program. I was doing pretty good. But I started getting really frustrated and angry. This was the late 80s, early 90s. Gang stuff had really hit Portland hard. And I started seeing more and more of minority youth, particularly African Americans at that time, coming in with that whole gang mentality, dress, lifestyle, etc. And I started saying to myself, you know, even though in corrections, you know, corrections is really about accountability. It's about, you know, public safety, safety and security of staff and youth. And so we hope we can do some good reformation. But what I really saw happening, particularly with the youth of color, man, was that when they got around each other, whether over at the gym or during other opportunities to socialize, they wasn't talking about, well, when I return to the community, I'm going to be getting back with the family. I'm going to be a positive in the community. I'm going to get back with my family. I'm going to get my education. Basically, what they were saying is, when I get out, I'm going to get my slang on. I'm going to do, you know, get back with the rival. I'm going to get my hustle on. And I saw, man, this is a vicious cycle. And even though they were going to school or whatever, the smart ones would comply because they knew that was the fastest way to get out on parole. And then you got the ones who want to try to represent that hardcore image. And I really felt this was a vicious cycle of incarceration and then re-incarceration, because when they get out, most of them wasn't doing well academically and were behind, didn't have support systems. They were probably going to violate parole, get killed, be back in the system. And you know how you do sometimes when you see a gap in service, You want to sit there and say, man, somebody needs to do something. I said, well, McLaren need to do something. The state need to do something. But after a while, I think people got tired of hearing my voice. And a colleague of mine said, Lonnie, you should do it. And it's kind of like a sonic boom went off in my head. And I don't have the time to tell the whole story, but it really caused me to say, hey, we can do something here. And so I put a proposal together. We presented it to the superintendent of the facility. Fortunately, he had only been there a couple of years, had a treatment background, and we said the magic words to him. We're not going to charge you no money. It ain't going to cost you no funding. We're going to volunteer to do this. What we need is your empowerment and support. Because when we start talking about bringing guys that have been rival gang members from the same sets together under one roof. See, back when we started this deal, words like culturally competent, working across culture wasn't in the vocabulary then. And so when we started talking about it, people got nervous in that facility. They thought it was going to be riots, fights, more organized, more militant, but we got the opportunity to do it. And I'm going to tell you, it's been such rewarding work, but it's been tough work, grinding work, frustrating work. See, Laleen says something very important. You got to see the good in young people. But I'm going to tell you something. See, I thought when we pulled these guys together, I thought, man, with my background, got some education, some treatment, we're going to get them to click just like this. Man, see, when you get deep and start challenging, what we want to do is challenge their thinking, their value system, the impact their lifestyle is having on their community, family, where they would be down the road. Talking about education, vocational skill training, these guys push back and they challenge you and they challenge me. So I remember one meeting, they pushed my button so bad I had my colleague, I said, man, I got to walk out for a minute. I have to walk out. And you know what? I almost gave up. I said, I'll be honest, F them. Let them get shot. Let them go back and sell drugs and wind up getting another beef and go into the adult system, But something, thank the Lord, happened. Here I am doing all this advocacy about, we need to do more work. We need to reach out. These guys are savage, but we can't quit stereotyping them. Just because you're in the game don't mean you got to stay in the game. But when my button got pushed, I was ready to do what a lot of people do because they're good at making you feel like they can't turn the corner, and that's give up. So instead of giving up, we intensified our inventions, our strategies, and you know what? People thought we'd be done, one and done, like they say, playing, some kind of sports. They said, well, they would never last. They're a bunch of wannabes, 3 months, 6 months. Well, we've been doing this over 20 years now. And it's grown into the only program of its type in the Juvenile Correctional Agency. But at the end of the day, I know we're the back end of the system. I know our role is when they come in, we got to meet their needs, and we put programs in place, contracted with a lot of providers up here in the Portland community to work with them when they come back out into the community so that they have better opportunities. But at the end of the day, in order to address the issues around disproportionate minority contact, back end can't do it by themselves. It's got to be a collaborative effort, and it's got to be partnerships with schools, law enforcement, families, communities. When we became the Oregon Youth Authority in 1996 through Senate Bill 1 legislation, there was a mandate put in there that OYA address disproportionate minority contact. Interesting that I was part of then Attorney General Kulagowski. He was reforming the juvenile justice system back then, and I was on a lot of those work groups that was helping to strategize that. And Craig Campbell was his point person to doing a lot of the actual legislation. And I called Craig and said, you need to put that mandate in there. And they did. And the reality of it is that now we do our work in corrections, but the key is really the front end. We got to get young people, and like Laurleen said, these young people, all of our young people are valuable. We got to reach them at early ages when we first see risk factors surfacing. We have to have teachers and others that work with them that have an authentic understanding of some of the challenges and issues that they face. You have to be able to develop relationships. We got all the data, research, curriculum we need. We got some brilliant people. But I found out the things that make a difference are really those people that really believe young people have the power of change. Now I'm going to hit for the last 5 minutes is that we have a serious crisis with mass incarceration, and I want to share the impact. Because see, once you get in the system, the hardest thing is to get out. and you got more labels on you. And it is the most overrepresented population in our justice system is African American males. And I'm gonna ask my guy right here, I can't show all the videos, but I wanna show a slide, because I think you need to see this data about the impact that mass incarceration are having on black men today. I'm gonna have to stand up.
You can do this yourself.
Oh, can I do it?
Sure.
Yeah.
But can you come here? Oh no, that's the one. Sorry. Yeah, you're here. Okay. So,
Yeah, just keep going, keep going. Okay, hold on, go back. Okay, nationally, just look at this data. While black youth account for 17% of the youth population, they represent 28% of juvenile arrests, 37% of the detained population, 38% of those in secure placement, 58% of youth committed to state adult prison. That's by the Citizen Project, which really monitors this. Here in Oregon, African Americans only make up 2% of Oregon's general population, but about 10% of Oregon's prison population. Check this out. 458 of every 100,000 white Oregonians are behind bars. 2,763 per 100,000 African Americans are behind bars. And that's the State of Black Oregon report that the Urban League of Portland put out. This is just some data. Department of Corrections have over 13,000 inmates. Again, blacks make up 9.4%. They're only a 2% population. So Latino 12.9%, 12.2% in the community. And the similar kind of data with the Youth Authority. Commitments are down, lowest it's ever been, but the disproportionality is still high. Blacks again in the Youth Authority, close custody 12%, Latino 28%. Those are the most overrepresented. America makes up 5% of the world population, 25% of the prison population. Now, this is what I really want to get to. The current prison population has skyrocketed since 1970. White men over 18, check this out, 1 in 106 are locked up. Black men over 18, 1 in 15. Black men 20 to 34, 1 in 9 locked up. 1 in 3 black men, 20 to 29, is under some type of correctional supervision. Parole, probation, jails, detention, correctional facilities. Black men born right now, it's projected 1 in 3 in America will go to prison. That's the Pew Trust work that put out that data. Now, this is my last one. Mass incarceration destroys families and communications. 1 in 9 black children has a parent in prison. 4% of children without incarcerated parents get expelled from school. About 25% with incarcerated fathers get expelled. 1 in 8 black men can't vote. It's a permanent impact on school, marriage, employment, and earnings. If you've got labels, felonies, you know, it impacts your ability to go to school, get an education. Marriage, you're not there to be the head, the leader in the household, employment, earnings, etc. Now, last one. The cost of incarceration exceeds annual expenses at top private universities, which can total about $60,000 per student for tuition, room, and board. Just think about if we could flip the script on some of that money.
How much they spend in school?
For what?
10,000.
They're now up to 10,000 spending that much in school.
Oh, really? Did everybody hear that? Did
No, just say that.
you say that? Repeat that down.
They spend $60,000 to keep a kid in the prison system.
Oh, yeah.
And less than $10,000 to keep them in school.
All right. Now, I don't really have time to go over this. I can send it to Donna, maybe she can disseminate. But this is just my snapshot of what communities, schools can do. I think you got to hear the voice, engage the community, youth, families, community leaders, faith-based elders, people living every day in the community. Heck, some of this work is going on right now by a lot of committed advocates and people.
I want you to finish.
You want me to finish this? I think I should. Thank you, Donna. Oh, go back just a little bit. Go back to that last one. Okay, no, you got it. Review, modify, and eliminate school policies and practices that contribute to disproportionate suspension and expulsions on minority youth. We need to set high academic and behavioral expectations for each student. We have to tell students they need to know that they can be successful. We need to utilize alternative strategies and practices to reduce exclusionary and extreme discipline. We need to be creative and use common sense when determining student discipline. Even in our corrections, I tell staff, we do the training of staff in facilities, in the OYA, around cultural sensitivity. The best thing, a lot of them can use common sense. Support school and community-based programs that target risk factors of delinquency or other problems at an early age. Build on protective factors, parental involvement, and monitoring peer support, academic achievement, etc. They need after-school supervised activities and recreational programs and services. We know a lot of time trouble happens when they're unsupervised, don't have a lot to do in the evenings. This is a lot of restorative justice type services that need to happen. Mentoring, tutorial, restitution, community service, student, parent, teacher conferences. Instead of just, somebody mentioned it could have been Lorleen or it might have been Donna, you know, you want to give a referral or suspend some youth over some minor infraction. I'm going to be honest, a lot of times schools are under pressure. You got certain standards they got to reach to get certain levels of funding, and a lot of times the students that may be bringing that down are the ones that really need the most help. You know, and they tend to be the lower income, minority populations, and if they're not in school, I don't think it affects GPA achievement levels. Okay. Training for teachers and others on being culturally sensitive and strategies for developing positive, caring, trusting, and empowering relationships with diverse youth, families, and address any language barriers. And lastly, and in conclusion, by stretching our imaginations and creating a narrative that accounts for circumstances, compassion, we can help drive extraordinary change. Every child deserves an equal opportunity to become a positive and productive member of our society. Basically, but lastly, I wish I had time to really get into a lot of these topics, but I wanted to give you a snapshot. We got work to do. Me and Lorleen, Donna, we've been there.
Wait.
We're still here. We're not go.
I'm 70. So
Okay, Donna.
some young people.
Hopefully we're looking passing the torch. We're still here, but we got to pass the torch and stuff. So I thank you again for the invite, and you guys have a great, I think we'll have facilitated discussions.
All right, let's.
So I just wanted to do a follow-up, excuse me, on something for you to think about. When I was in California, I was working in the legislature, and I did a study on the California Youth Authority, and happened to go to one of the youth authorities which is what Lonnie helped start here in Oregon, which was, had pictures from years gone by, the graduating class. And one of the graduating classes, one of the first ones they had at this particular institution, held a young man who turned out to be a movie star, Rory Calhoun. And he was a star during the 50s. Very handsome. And the guy who was in charge was excited that Rory was one of his kids who made good. And I just started walking around the room looking at the pictures, and something hit me, and I went back and started at the beginning. What hit me is that when Rory was in there, when it was the 40s, it was almost 98% white. There was one kid who kind of looked like he might be Latino or Native American, and I think there was one black kid. And then we get up to the 1960s, when Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and it changed. It changed. You notice Lonnie had a statistic of 1970? It changed, and what ended up happening is that when I was there in the early 80s, that one or two were white. Over half of them were black, and the rest were Latino. And this was a prison. They called it a youth authority. This was a prison. And it was very scary. And I thought, wow, what is going on here? And I thought about that for a long time. And what I realized is what Michelle, what's her name? Michelle Alexander has written about, the new Jim Crow. That It's a way, we no longer have slavery, we no longer have Jim Crow, but we have the penal system. And that's what it's all about. It's a way to control a group of people and to get rid of them. And you notice that he said they don't get to vote. They can't get a job. It destroys the family. So this is a much deeper problem. And you ask the question, well, if it costs $60,000 to put one kid in there, but it only takes $10,000 to educate them, wouldn't you want to spend $10,000? You would think. But the problem is that there's people getting jobs out of that $60,000.
Yeah, that's right.
So this is about you're a commodity and you're no longer a slave that's being bought and sold, but you're a commodity and you're still being bought and sold. So want to do something a little bit different. Normally we go right into our discussion groups, but right now I think I would like to give you guys about 10 or 15 minutes to do a little Q&A with our speakers. So would you like to do that? Yes, no? All right. That was real meager. Okay, let's try that one more time.
Yes.
You want to do this? Okay, all right, go for it. All right, somebody have, you know what, if you have a question, come up here because the audience needs to hear what you have to say. So just come line up here.
So a question in the back, coming to the front. My understanding is that you were saying that
They're filming, so you need to come up and speak, please, if you're going to ask a question. Come on. You PC. PC, could you do that? There's a mic here.
Mike.
So if you want to talk, you better do this.
Ma'am. Do it right. That's what I tell her. So I think the general perception is that if you're in the prison community, you don't get to vote. Now, my understanding from being on the streets when we were trying to get people who are homeless to vote is that you can vote in Oregon. In most states, you do not get to vote. And the reason I bring that up is, it's not that it's different. We don't vote right here. We certainly don't encourage those who've been in the system to vote. We need to vote, and not only vote, we need to write the laws. If you don't write the laws, you're at the mercy of the law. Pass that on.
Thank you, sir. Hold it like a rock star. That's that's the only place where the sound is right in the tip. So hold it like a rock star.
If somebody's not an educator, and if somebody's not in the education field, is there something we could do?
Are you talking to me?
Or either of you?
All right. I can respond and then Lonnie can as well. So, yeah. My son's a musician, and he has this CD, and on it, there's a piece that I love. He's trying to get people to vote, and it's, "You got power, dude. You got power, chick." So, really, you have power. You don't need anybody's permission to be who you want to be and to be how you want to be. So, even if you're with a group of people who don't think that someone is worthy for you to acknowledge, you can do that. That's a big thing. I think Oprah has this thing going on called Say Hello or something like that. I don't know. I've been hearing about this. I guess it's a movement. But, you know, really, being human is a movement. That's what it means to be human. Be human. That's all I can say is everybody can do something. Everybody has. You got power, chick. No offense.
Oh, well, I'm just going to agree. I think that, there's all kind of opportunities to volunteer, to be involved. And, one thing when we were in, corrections, we knew we couldn't be a silo. We had to reach out to the community. And just because you don't have to have been in a gang or been in that type of situation. A lot of times young people just need people that care, want to spend time with them, listen to them. And to me, it's about doing those intangible things. The intangible things go a long way. you know, towards making a difference and building that relationship. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Can you mention a couple of, like, organizational things? You had mentoring up there. Where can
Right.
they do mentoring? Where can they do tutorial? You mentioned several things. Where can they do that?
I think there's programs that work. I know you probably can look, what is that, the youth, I'm trying to think of the program that Antoinette Edwards oversees. It's a youth empowerment or Office of Youth Violence. They, I think, coordinate a lot of different programs, but I think they're also looking for mentors and volunteers.
The Youth Gang Task Force.
Youth Gang Task Force. And even if you ever wanted to work, like I said, within corrections, we have students, we have people from the communities, we have advisory board. We have ethnic community advisory boards. When we went out and established was African American, Latino, and Native American advisory boards. And schools, you know, so, and there's tremendous, in fact, mentorship now is really one of those things that they're looking at more in relation to a lot of the restorative justice work. So there's definitely a lot of opportunities in schools and corrections and community-based programs to really be involved.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I heard Michelle Alexander speak, and I've been part of a book group read on her book. It certainly peeled off some remaining scales off my eyes, and I still have some. But I think this is a civil rights issue of our time, mass incarceration and ending the new Jim Crow, and that includes the civil rights of youngsters in our schools, and you've pointed that out. And I just want to emphasize that you have a lot of allies in this work. And some of them are getting together Thursday night. You've made a great platform for the gathering at Rigler School on restorative justice and racial equity in our schools.
What time?
It's at 7 o'clock at not Rigler School, sorry, St. Charles Catholic Church on Northeast 42nd. But Rigler School, Grant High School, David Douglas School that have restorative justice programs will be featured. And we'll look at the difference between punitive, exclusionary, zero tolerance practices, which really end up with students in the prison pipeline, or juvenile justice program first.
42nd
Between Emerson and Killingsworth, just south of Killingsworth. And there's a parking lot in the church. We have a real multicultural panel and interviewers. Maria Scanelli and Sheila Warren will be interviewing 9 panelists, including students, teachers, counselors, and a justice worker in the juvenile justice system that's using restorative justices. There are several Ending the New Jim Crow programs available for people who want to get involved, and you'll hear about those there as well. But I so admire this work, and I do think it's the most important work of our time, so thank you.
So I'm a young white woman, in case you can't tell, studying to be a teacher in public schools. And one of the things, I'm a tutor with the AVID program right now, and one of the things that I have the hardest time with is sort of bridging the gap that already exists between me and students of color, and just the way that they perceive me as a person coming in as a tutor who has this position, who, you know, they perceive that I think I know better. Maybe I do think that in some type of way. And I wonder what advice you have for people like me who are studying to be teachers, who are part of that white female majority of teachers. And I see myself, you know, as very much part of the problem. I still want to be a teacher. But what advice would you give to people like me in that position?
Can I answer that one?
Sure. As an African American female who has taught in all white schools and has been the only black person that many of these people ever talked to up close. I'm the first one they ever touched, okay? It's about relationship. It's not about color. It's about looking the kid in the eye, like Lurleen said, and letting them know that you like them, and letting them know that you're here to learn from them as well as to teach them. And so it's strictly about relationship. And one of the things that I always do, and I tell the kids, is that you belong to me. I don't care how old you are, you're mine. And if I see you acting up, I'm gonna get in your jammies. If I see you doing good, great. But I see those kids on the street, and they come up to me and they hug me and they apologize for being a poo-poo head. And, you know, but they know, and I would hear them say sometimes, you know she loves you. And I tell them that, I love you. It's important for me, for you to be successful. So love them like they're yours.
Can I speak, Ms. Maxey?
No, this is school, this is my thing.
So I train interns who are going into counseling. And one of the things I tell them is that the theory and the practice don't match. So you can throw that out the window once you get there. Doesn't matter, you know, what race or ethnicity your students are. And the other thing I would tell you is to forget the fact that I'm a white female. Oh, that's not a good thing where I'm going. Because you have to, I mean, look outside yourself and see what you see. But you need to be respectful. That's the biggest thing, because if kids know you don't respect them, they are not going to learn from you.
I just gotta say one quick thing, so I think Donna and Laura Lee summed it up for me, is like, don't give up, you know, and like I said, you know, youth are good at seeing who cares, who don't, and they test you, and at the end of the day, they're gonna see who's gonna be there. You know, like I said, I never say whether you're black, white. To me, it comes down to individual commitment, and also you gotta do your due diligence. Do your homework. Be aware of what some of the challenges, the issues are facing young people today. And if you're really committed, I tell you, hang in there. Because when we hung in there, I tell you, some of the best relationships I've ever had and loyalty have come from young people, the same kind they gave to the game. Once they see you care and they get hope and believe, we had to say, knowledge yourself. Once they get that knowledge yourself and get those other labels off, it's extraordinary, the change and the impact you can have.
All right,
Just
so
a little bit of
I need to ask
time.
the audience a question. We've got 3 people here who want to ask a question, and that means we're not going to have a lot of discussion time. Is that okay if they go ahead and ask their question? Yes. Okay, great.
I was interested in the distinction that you made, Lurleen, between the education system and the mental health system. And when my son started out middle school, the very first day he got on the bus, and he can be annoying, I guess, you know, maybe he's 12 years old and he's a young boy, and he was stabbed with a pencil by a student who lives in our neighborhood, and he never got on that bus again. And my husband and I learned that the consequences for the young boy who stabbed him were that he wasn't going to be allowed to ride the bus for a week. But he also achieved that never having to ride the bus with my annoying son again. And it just strikes me that at the age of 12 years old, starting out middle school, there is an opportunity in an education context, to have a more positive outcome, because that young man is in jail for a very long time for stabbing his girlfriend freshman year. And it's a trauma for the whole community to see that young man from our neighborhood, what happened, you know, what happened in that middle school, what happened when we talk about the mental health services. Is that really the place to address that specific kind of issue? That
I would say so, because what happened? How could a child go from just getting on the bus, going to school, and all of a sudden I want to kill somebody, I want to stab somebody? What is going on with that child that he or she has so much anger and rage that they can't talk about that. There's no one seeing that, and that they're gonna take that out on somebody else. That is a mental health issue.
Okay, but that happened on a school bus.
And I heard you.
I mean, and that's what strikes me, is that at the age of 12 years old, nobody is who they're gonna be.
That's true.
That is it seems like an excellent moment to have conversation. I mean, my son learned to be less annoying through a speech class that his teacher creatively defined as, you know, a leadership opportunity, but it was really a communication, learning basic communication skills that he was doing. So I don't know, it seems to me that when something like that happens in a school environment, if the resources are available to really have conversations that bring families in, that require the people involved to actually resolve the problem.
It's not, unfortunately, it's not uncommon to have a lot of professionals in a room talking about what are we going to do with this child and not see the mental health issues. I'm a consultant on it's called the Alternative Placement Committee, to, you know, that juvenile justice. And when young people have committed some type of offense and they're brought before this committee, not the actual kid, but the case, and they give all this documentation. You know, these are the things that have been going on. This is what the home life is like. This, you know, they do everything, a biopsychosocial kind of thing, except it's not generally done in consult or collaboration with anybody who does mental health. And consequently, everybody in the room who really wants to do well by this child will just kind of like not see that part. Like today I looked at one and I went, so wait, I see this kid had a mental health assessment, blah, 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 time ago, but there's no diagnoses, you know? So we have to get those kids and look at that and say, okay, how can we help this child? So somewhere along the line, we're failing kids.
Sounds like what you've been advocating for, and I'm gonna cut you off, because I got two more people here.
I'm sorry that happened to your son. Well, you have,
Come on, you got the mic, sweetie.
I was just apologizing for that happening to her son. I was gonna ask, well, first I was gonna say, it's amazing what can happen when you throw a dog a bone, but with technology, I was just wondering if you've noticed that crime maybe is going down a little bit, or people like having Twitter wars instead of games. And and I also have another question, but and then also if people who is making money off of prisons? I mean, if you have any idea, like it's food and, you know, commissary and all that kind of stuff, and if people make their money off of this, I mean, it sounds sad to say, but like, are they really encouraged to stop it? Or like, you know, if...
That's where I want some investigative reporting.
Man, that's a lot of questions there. Well, I'll try to tackle the first one around the technology, social media. I think that, you know, gang members have utilized that a whole lot more. I mean, they text, you know, and they communicate, and they're more mobile today. You know, they get on the Macs, and because of a lot of issues, many of them have even, you know, went out to the more East Metro areas, you know, of the city. So I say technology definitely has played a role in terms of, you know, them probably being better able to communicate. I'll tell you one of the saddest things I've seen on technology is that, check this out, some young people, check this out in terms of what do you call it, on Facebook, they are doing RIPs about themselves before they're dead.
Oh, wow.
they actually write like an obituary, write it out. They're doing it because they don't see themselves living to be 25. And that's one of the saddest things that I've seen in terms of, you know, with the Facebook. But yeah, I think communication definitely plays a role. In terms of cost,
I mean, have you noticed like a decline in like?
I think overall there's been a decline in juvenile crime. Like I shared up there with some of the data, the numbers really in terms of commitments to the Oregon Youth Authority, in terms of juvenile correctional facilities, is really lower now. That number total, 638 total population, has been lower than it's been in years. But again, we still got that disproportionality that exists with young people of color, particularly African Americans, that get caught up in relation to their numbers in the community. And the cost, like I said, is, I mean, it really goes down to the state budget. You know, I mean, some of the biggest drivers of the state budget is the Department of Corrections. You know, I think they may have the second or third largest budget, you know, in terms of general fund dollars.
I think she's talking about like in Arizona, the private prisons.
Oh, some of the privatizations?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I was just wondering like if people are making money.
Well, I
the
think
people
people-
that approach them on the street, does their salary come from that money?
well, I think with privatization, I think that's, again, they took advantage of the boom because you saw that, you know, cost or incarceration has increased since the 70s. And some of them have put out that they can do business cheaper through privatization. May not say they could do it better, but maybe less expensive. And again, there's always people that when you have a service, they got to hire people, correctional officers and other staff to perform those services.
Okay, well maybe we can talk to the gangbangers and the thugs and tell them to have Twitter wars and stay at home.
That would be more advisable.
It's still crappy, but at least, you know. Thank you.
That reminds me, Rogan said one day that the best way to stop gang violence is to get a whole bunch of grandmas together to do drive-by whoopings. Grandmothers are still special. And it's interesting, when John was talking about relationships, I am, when I run into young people, when I'm out, I'm considered OG. I'm OG. And with that title comes a bit of respect.
They don't know what that is.
Oh, old gangster. But I'm actually a lawyer. My father was a gangster, but they know I'm a gangster. They know I'm a lawyer. They know that. And there is a respect given for that, even in the worst kid. So, you know, that tells me that there's hope, that they're not totally lost. My question, though, is this. We're kind of back at the same thing. In 1977, the Metropolitan Human Relations Commission did a study on the disproportionate suspension and expulsion of black kids. Okay? I know about the study because I did it. Okay? And I approached Portland Public Schools, and they didn't want to give us the information that we needed, but interestingly enough, I had a math genius working with me. And the data that they gave us, we came out with the same conclusions they did in terms of identifying the particular schools and the populations, right? And I remember the support. I laid out a PR program for them and identified some programs nationally that they could probably look at to target some of these problems, because this model I developed was a fairly decent model, but it was kind of common sense. The support I got was, we were called in to, my partner Dick Kuzik and I, called him the Polish Rifle, was a math genius. We go into this meeting with the district computer folks, and we walk in the room and somebody says, snakes in the grass, at last, at last. Okay? And they tell us how we did all this stuff wrong, but it was funny how we came up with the same conclusions that they did. Okay? Went to a school board meeting to talk about this study, and Robert Blanchard looked over at us and he adjusted his eyeglasses for me. He did like this.
Oh.
I remember that to this day. And the point I'm making is that, the point and the question I'm asking, resistance by those institutions that are charged with it, partly charged, part of the solution in addressing these problems. Here we are 37 years later, the same problem. And I remember laying out these programs to them, and they resisted them, said, no, we're not going to do that. And my model was adopted by school districts in Chicago, Austin, Texas, other parts of the country, but not in Portland, which I thought was fascinating. So to what extent, the question then, to what extent is there still the kind of institutional resistance to addressing some of these problems? Like another point of resistance. Trying to amend the Teachers' Standards and Practices Commission's requirements for certifying teachers, for putting in a multicultural element in there. They resisted that. They didn't do it. They refused to do it. Is there the same kind of resistance, or has that been modified in such a way that we still end up 37 years later in the same spot?
Is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay, that was long.
I know. I'm a lawyer.
He's an attorney.
I talk for a living.
Hi, Greg. Thank you. So I don't work for Portland Public Schools. I'm always going to be an educator, but I'm in a different field right now. But I want to say this. It doesn't have to be a curriculum. Again, it is, as Donna said, it's the relationship. And it is about you as an individual, understanding your ability to have power and the power to impart your humanity to another person and to acknowledge and respect theirs. So just even just having that understanding of self, okay? Because you have to have no self first before you can start teaching someone else. It doesn't matter your ethnicity, your race, it doesn't matter the ethnicity, the race, gender, whatever orientation of your students. You can do this, or the people that you work with, or your staff, or whoever you serve. Just be human. That's all I can say. You can bring you to the work that you do, to the life that you live. I don't know what else to say about that, because we can have 500 million sets of baseline essays on the African Americans, Latinos, on women, on Native Americans, Asian Americans. It does not matter about that. It matters what's in here. And again, it matters how you feel about the fact that we have not done better.
Okay, we have about 20 minutes to talk in our groups. A couple of quick things. We have facilitators at the tables. Facilitators, where are you? Stand up, please, so folks can see who you are. All righty. And so I'll go to a table. Lurleen and Lonnie, will you go to a table too? And make sure that every table is covered. Tony's back there. Additionally, we have an evaluation that's on the table. Please fill that out before you go. And there's a survey that's done by Resolutions Northwest. And they're asking questions about the school and about students and being community partners and welcoming your school. Also, there's some information we have in the back of the room for the PTA. I'll bring it around. The Oregon PTA. I am the chair of their Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Not that I wanted to do it, but we need to have it happen. So you can volunteer through them. Also, I didn't get the brochures for this, but the Portland Parent Union is led by Sheila Warren. Lurleen mentioned her. You can go online and find their website, get involved with them. They're working on improving the situation. So, and the forum that Carol mentioned is at 5:30, not 7 o'clock, on 42nd, Northeast 42nd, between Emerson and Killingsworth. All right, so facilitators, go for it.